We're live on YouTube, on Facebook, on Rumble, on X. Good to see everyone. It seems like we might have an update on the story we've been talking about for the past week and a half now. It seems we don't have full confirmation of this because obviously actions speak louder than words, and all we have right now are the words. But words can be important. It seems like we might have a change of tune from the White House when it comes to how they're handling the Epstein files. What do I mean by this? Last night, podcaster Benny Johnson posted the following on X. He said, and I quote, just got off the phone with top federal law enforcement contact. The change in approach to Epstein has been dramatic. Expect more disclosures, Benny says. Some very powerful people inside the administration are now pushing for a special counsel and a full press briefing on Epstein findings, end quote. Now, you know me, and I know you. We are skeptics by nature. Actions speak louder than words. These are just words. They're not actions yet. I hope they precede actions. It does corroborate what I told you that my sources were telling me yesterday, which is that President Trump is listening. President Trump is beginning to understand exactly why you and I, his base, care so viscerally about the Epstein files. Not because we have some morbid curiosity and Epstein the creep, but because it represents justice. So we're going to talk about this. Lara Trump, the daughter-in-law of President Trump, also had some revelations about what may be happening inside the White House and what we can possibly expect. Again, it's also words, not actions yet. However, I do think that these words are important. And we're going to talk today on the show with someone who is who is doing active work on trying to get accountability. Because that's one of the questions that I've been getting a lot in the last 24 hours, 48 hours is, okay, if President Trump understands why we care about the Epstein files, because it represents justice, we want the deep state held accountable for how they have hurt us. What does that accountability actually look like? Is it just firing Pam Bondi, who created this monster? Is it just releasing what very well may be empty Epstein files? I'm not sitting here saying I know what's in the Epstein files. I don't know. Nobody knows. It could be that the deep state wrote lies or hid the stuff or destroyed the stuff, or we don't know. So it's not just firing Pam Bondi. It's not just showing us what's in the Epstein files. What does real accountability look like? We're going to talk to Congresswoman Paulina Luna. She's on the House Oversight Committee, and she's on the Declassification Task Force about what accountability actually looks like. She's going to join us in just 1 second. I want to mention our show today is sponsored by All Family Pharmacy. Freedom is so important. Medical freedom means you get to decide what's best for your health. Not the government, not Fauci, not Big Pharma, certainly not your insurance company. That's why I love what All Family Pharmacy is doing. They're changing the way that people get their medications. No insurance, no gatekeepers, just fast, affordable access to the medications that you trust, shipped right to your door. Here's how it works. Number one, you go online and you select the medications that you need. Number two, a licensed doctor reviews your order and then writes your prescription. Number three, your medications ship straight to you. It really is that simple. They've got the essentials. They have methylene blue, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, antibiotics, and over 200 other options. And yes, every order includes the prescription. If you believe in medical freedom the way that I do, and I know you do, this is your kind of pharmacy. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz. Use code Liz10 to save 10% off your order. That's allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz, code Liz10. All right, we are delighted to welcome to the program Congresswoman Paulina Luna from the great state of Florida, a Republican from that state. She's on the Oversight Committee. She is also on the task force on declassification. Congresswoman Luna, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on, Liz.
All right, Congresswoman, what's funny is the last time you were on my show was February 26th, a couple months ago. And I remember that date specifically because it was one day before I went to the White House and was handed by Attorney General Pam Bondi that infamous white Epstein binder. And what was funny about that day is when I'm in the White House with Pam Bondi, I walk next to her from the cabinet room where we had been meeting across the hallway to the Oval Office. And she is yakking in my ear about how annoyed she is with you. She's saying, oh, this Congresswoman Luna is going on the media and talking about how I'm slow walking the release of the Epstein files, yada, 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 complaining about how busy she is. And I have no idea, actually, in that moment, if she was aware that you going on the media was you talking to me on this show the day prior to that. But you were actually right. You called me after the Epstein files, after that debacle happened. You called me and you warned me about Attorney General Pam Bondi, and you said that there was more there than meets the eye, and you were right.
Well, I was just, for everything that we were trying to investigate specifically to this, I just felt that our messages, our letters went unanswered. And I had been really pursuing this for a while now, going back to even previous to, I think, that February incident. You actually had a whistleblower that came forward on the Benny Johnson show. And so there's been a lot of what seems like conflicting information. We had this whistleblower state that there was evidence and information being destroyed. Then we were told that there was files. Now there's no files. So look, we were simply trying to get access to information that we felt that the American people deserve to see. And now you're seeing it appears that that's not going to be the case. And so what I will tell you is, at least with our other investigations we've been able to conduct, the way that the administration handled specifically the rollout for John F. Kennedy, for example, is basically the standard of transparency that should be the case, right? They should take the information that they have, put it on the National Archives, give everyone access, don't gatekeep it, and really put it out there. Ultimately, though, I don't make those declassification authorities. And, we're in a situation now where I haven't seen the file, so I can't really speculate as to why the messaging is going out the way that it is. I also haven't heard that there is going to be more release of information. So I'm hopeful that that interview is correct on Benny's show with Laura. I think that would be the right thing to do. But, we're in this situation for a reason. So.
I have also, by the way, just to clarify, I have not also been able to confirm that there will be additional transparency or more releases. That was something Lara Trump said to Benny Johnson and something Benny Johnson reported. I don't have independent confirmation of that either. My question to you is, I assume it was the Attorney General leaked that memo to Axios last Sunday, almost 10 days ago now. Was the conclusion of that memo that there's no blackmail, no client list, he definitively killed himself, and there's no other documents that are going to be made public? Was that communicated at all to you before that was posted?
No.
Have you had any communication with the Attorney General since?
No.
Well, that tells you, I gave her the benefit of the doubt for a long time. I said, listen, I hope she produces. I hope she does the right thing. She's on our side. You choose to trust someone that's on your side. If you don't have, I didn't have access to the SDNY documents, so I have to either take her word for it or not. You're in the Trump White House. The Attorney General is telling you these things. You choose whether to trust someone. I think most people would have made the same decision that I would, but there's just this, every day there's additional evidence that she is not acting in a trustworthy manner. And I appreciate your work behind the scenes to try to enact transparency. The thing
if I can inject, I think, the one thing that is a fact is that there's information not pertaining to CSAM, not pertaining to victims, then can be released. And obviously, first and foremost, we don't want to re-hurt some of these people. But there's also information that, for example, the bag of passports. What happened with the bag of diamonds? These are all things that were literally in a Daily Mail UK article. So that information can be released. And I think that given how everything's happened with the rollout on this, it's created definitely a debacle. And so if you're going to restore trust, and a lot of people, rightfully so, specifically to this, I think felt that this was something that is important to the very soul of the country in regards to, do we truly live in a society where you can't buy your way out, basically? And so I think that that's why it's so incredibly important. What I can tell you is it's unfortunate because on Friday we had a bombshell investigation come out in regards to our findings on JFK. And then on Sunday evening, there was this memo and it wasn't communicated to us. And so specifically on the JFK front, the American people were right. We actually have hard evidence now that the CIA engaged in the cover-up of the assassination of JFK, which even if you said this 20 years ago, they would call you a conspiracy theorist. We actually have documented evidence on that now.
And I want to show that on the screen, by the way, because this is, and forgive me for interjecting here. I want people to understand how significant this is, but also how it pertains to the Epstein files, not because I'm suggesting that the two things have anything to do with each other, but because through your investigation, your dogged refusal to believe just what government officials told you, you were able to secure this information, which, not that I came to the JFK situation with any preconceived notions, but there's, again, a lot of evidence that there was CIA involvement in his assassination and death. And you were able to actually secure information that does kind of corroborate that.
Yeah, it does. And in fact, so much so that the Washington Post, which the Washington Post doesn't like me, but they actually wrote an article exonerating the findings and essentially stating just that there was a cover up that took place. Axios published it. So it's been big within the JFK file. A lot of people say, well, why does this matter? Well, first of all, President Trump, through executive order, declassified JFK, MLK, and RFK. But previous presidents, when they had attempted to declassify anything on JFK, they were actually stonewalled by our own intelligence agencies. So you had to have an arm of Congress that would deliver on the president's executive order. And so that's exactly what we've done. And I will say also kudos to Radcliffe on this, because there were specifically about 15 files that no investigators who'd been investigating this for decades could locate. And we were finally able to track them down. And through months of effort and work, we actually were able to finally crack the case on JFK. But going back to kind of this whole model and angle on transparency, again, I will continue to advocate. I have, even before I think this was like a national topic of discussion, I was pushing for transparency on this issue. And I will, I guess, finalize by saying this. We have asked and we are going to continue to advocate for the transparency similar to how it was rolled out on JFK, because that is the gold standard of transparency in this administration. But I do think that the reason, and validly so, people have concerns because, it seems like, regardless of the reasoning behind it, it seems like people are being covered for, and that's not acceptable. And so, I will continue to push for transparency. Obviously, though, I'm not the one that's the final authority on it.
No, and that's something I think people misunderstood at the beginning, that the declassification task force doesn't have any declassification authority. You are serving in your oversight capacity as a member of Congress. I think people understand that at this point. I know you have to go quickly here. I do want to ask you one question, and we can bring you back on for a longer interview about this, because this is a critically important topic to our country. Roy Singham, Neville Roy Singham. We did a huge expose about 3 weeks ago on the show about this almost billionaire tech tycoon who is hiding out in communist China. He's the one who's funneling money through communist parties in the United States to fund the riots, the anti-ICE riots that we see. We saw him out in Los Angeles. We saw him in New York. It's his money funding it. You are one of the only members of Congress taking this report, this reality, I should say, seriously, and you're investigating him to see if he violated the law. You requested from him some documents, and you revealed just a day or two ago that you have not gotten a response from him to that.
Yeah. So every single member of oversight actually signed off on the letter to request testimony and documents in regard to his funding of these LA riots. You know that these are, again, the race-based riots that are basically brought to you by China. So I actually jokingly call them the Timu riots. But he just didn't respond. We were unable to deliver it. So the next step would be to send a subpoena. But if you have someone that's hiding out in China, how do you serve them a subpoena? We don't have international subpoena authority. So we actually are in the process right now of writing up a letter to the U.S. Treasury saying he's not responding. He's hiding from us. We have valid questions. We'll respond to Congress. So freeze assets. I think that's where we're at.
And are his assets generally held in the United States?
I think it's split. So I know from what I've heard that he has a place in California. His wife also, interestingly enough, is a big funder and donor to Code Pink, which is a pro-Palestine organization. But it's, aside from the Palestine-Israel argument, the point is that these organizations will use races to divide people, right? So like the Neville Singham race-based riot in California, focusing on illegal immigrants, are basically trying to say all illegals are Mexicans. So they're passing out Mexican flags, trying to stoke divide there with the whole ICE, anti-ICE protests. Then you have literally the same thing happen with Code Pink. It's literally people that support Israel versus people that support Palestine, when in actuality it's funded by the CCP. Same with the whole LA riots. And then you actually have, now I heard this actually from Glenn Beck just yesterday, Neville Singham's niece, or I guess so like a close family associate of his, is actually funding the Jews for Mondani in New York City, funded by the CCP. So I mean, there's a lot there, but they're using race to divide people. Wherever you're at on the race spectrum, doesn't matter. They do the same thing with BLM.
Roy Singham, by the way, also funds Students for Justice in Palestine and the Palestinian Youth Movement, which are all these anti-Semitic groups that, the pro-Hamas violent protests on campus are also funded by him. So it's a crossover.
If these people realize that, they would not be taking his money, because people don't realize that the CCP actually puts Uyghur Muslims in concentration camps. People forget that.
Yeah, or these people don't care actually about the Palestinians at all, and they just care about
They
communists.
just want to
Well,
go. Yeah.
please let us know. Please let us know what response you get from the U.S. Treasury. I think that money matters to people like this, and if his money is on the line, if his assets are on the line, I think this will be a good fulcrum. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll have to have you back soon because there's a lot more about the JFK stuff we want to talk about, a lot more about Roy Singham, but you have truth to find and transparency to execute, and we respect that. So thank you, Congresswoman. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Liz.
Okay, so a couple of things that we want to talk about today on the show. The first thing is there a change of tune from the White House when it comes to the Epstein narrative? And when I say change of tune, it's not exactly like a change of tune would be new. First, we were told by Pam Bondi that the client list was on her desk. Then we were told that it didn't exist in that leaked memo to Axios. Then President Trump said, well, something exists, but it's written by Hillary Clinton and James Comey and Barack Obama and Joe Biden. I don't know what exists or not. You don't know what exists or not. Benny Johnson reported last night that, and I want to bring this up on the screen again. We showed it a little bit ago. He said, just got off the phone with top federal law enforcement contact. The change in approach to Epstein has been dramatic. Expect more disclosures. Some very powerful people inside the administration are now pushing for a special counsel and a full press briefing on the Epstein findings. You can call me a skeptic if you want, and I am a skeptic. Actions speak louder than words, and while sometimes words are the right thing, sometimes I appreciate words. These are just words. I have not been able to independently confirm what Benny Johnson reported, except for the fact that yesterday on the show, I told you what my sources who are there told me, that President Trump is listening to you. President Trump is beginning to understand why the Epstein files are important to us, because they represent justice, because we've been hurt by the deep state. We were hurt during COVID. We were hurt during January 6th. We were hurt during Russiagate. We were hurt during the Ukraine impeachment, phony impeachment. We were hurt by the FBI targeting parents who wanted to unseat school board members for indoctrinating their children with critical race theory and trans ideology. We were hurt when the FBI raided the homes of journalists who were investigating Ashley Biden's diary, which is real. We were hurt many times by the weaponization of the federal government. There's this old phrase that I read in a book when I was a teenager that that said, once burnt, twice shy. And in the book, the phrase was, and I happen to be the original burnt child. That's exactly how we are collectively in the Republican Party. And not just the Republican Party. Anybody who casts their vote for Donald Trump, you feel a little burned. And so you're a little doubly skeptical. So these words from Benny Johnson, I hope they're true. I legitimately hope they're true. Do I know that they're true? I don't know that they're true. Benny Johnson also had Lara Trump, the daughter-in-law of President Trump. She now works for Fox News. She's not part of the administration. But I assume, as the daughter-in-law of President Trump, that she has pretty good access to the Trump administration and the inner workings, especially in moments such as these. She went on Benny Johnson's show last night, and she said she expects there to be more disclosures related to the Epstein files. Take a listen to this.
What would be your advice, given this back and forth? We're just coming off of Turning Point here in Tampa. This was the topic of conversation. What would be your advice in order to take the temperature down on this issue from within the administration?
Well, I do think that there needs to be more transparency on this. And I think that will happen. I mean, look, I don't know what truly exists there, but I know that this is something that's important to the president as well. He does want transparency on all these fronts, that everything we're talking about, because it's frustrated him as well. He sat for 4 years like the rest of us did and saw lie after lie and saw our country just being sent down the wrong path. And it was really frightening and very upsetting to a lot of people to see. And I would actually say over the past 10 years, we've all kind of endured this. Prior to that, it was probably happening, Benny, but we just weren't as aware of it. It wasn't until Donald Trump came down that golden escalator that he just kind of blew the doors off of everything. And people started to wake up and realize, wait a minute, things are not as they have always been presented to us. And I do believe that you will see that. Now, as it relates to the president, I know that this is probably not his number one thing he's focused on. He's focused on a lot of other important things. We've got this big announcement with Russia going on, I think, as we're speaking right now at the White House. We have, a Middle East, we're trying to get peace over there. We're trying to make sure that Iran's nuclear arsenal is obviously completely decimated. We want to make sure everything is on the right track for this country. Fortunately, you've seen no border crossings in the last month. 0, by the way. I think that's incredible. No one's talking about that enough. 0 illegal border crossings in the month of June. Amazing how that's all gone. So I don't know that this was top of mind for him, but he hears all the noise and he hears all of the consternation out there. And I think he's going to want to set things right as well. So I believe that there will probably be more coming on this. And I believe anything that they are able to release that doesn't, damage any witnesses or anyone underage or anything like that, I believe they'll probably try to get out sooner rather than later because they hear it and they understand it. So hopefully we see that happen sooner than later. And I guess that would be my advice. But to everybody out there who's all worked up about it, there's no great plot to keep this information away that I'm aware of. I do just believe that maybe it's been slow rolled for reasons that hopefully we understand down the line. And I think we're probably going to get more transparency on it very soon.
All right. In the YouTube live chat, Denise said to me, have you received an apology from Bondi yet? Bondi. No, I haven't. And listen, this story is not about me in any way, shape, or form. I was there that day and I've shared with you exactly what happened that day. And it's very important to the conversation now because there were red flags evident in Pam Bondi's behavior that day that not only were they evident that day, they grew, they became glaring in the days and weeks following because it became very obvious that Pam Bondi was not telling the truth to us. It became very obvious that Pam Bondi was looking to be a Fox News star, that she wanted attention, and that she was at best exaggerating, at worst, and probably more realistically, deliberately misleading the American people in order to get clicks and views. And so, no, I have not received an apology from Bondi. In fact, my sources have told me that Pam Bondi doesn't believe that she's done anything wrong. Not even when it comes to the binders. My sources tell me that she thinks that all of her behavior and all of her comments are above board. And if that is not another piece of evidence when you are piecing together this picture of Pam Bondi's character, then I don't know what is. I don't know what is. Listen, when Lara Trump said she does not believe that there is some grand plot to cover up Epstein's crimes, when she says she doesn't believe that there's no plot that she knows of an effort to obfuscate the truth from us, it's not that I don't believe her in the moment. I know some people have said, oh, maybe Donald Trump's name is involved somehow and he gave Pam Bondi the direction not to release these files. I don't buy that. I don't think that that's the most plausible explanation. And usually in situations like this, the most plausible explanation is the simplest explanation. And so the plot that we're talking about truly does hinge on Pam Bondi's attention seeking. She wants attention. She wants the adulation and the praise. She wants to be, oh, Pam Bondi, you went and you were our champion. That's what she's seeking. And it started this whole train wreck. And yes, there are a lot of unanswered questions. A lot of unanswered questions about Epstein, about what he was doing, the crimes that he committed, the victims, who he was supplying, if there were other clients that he was trafficking children to. Where did he get his money? Was he working with any US intel or British intel or Israeli intel, any intel? There's questions about his death and the narrative surrounding his death and the marks on his body being incongruent with the medical examiner's report and the analysis of multiple forensic pathologists whose jobs it is to analyze victims' bodies to see, like, did you commit suicide? Did you commit homicide? What kind of homicide? What was this crime? There are a lot of questions. And that brings us to what I want to talk about here. When we discuss accountability, right? When we say, listen, the reason we care about the Epstein files is because we care about justice. It's not because we think that there are going to be truckloads of bankers' boxes with actual real Epstein files in them. I actually never believed that. Just like I didn't believe that that would be the revelation that we got from the JFK files, because I don't believe deep state agents write in a neat little notebook a whodunit for us. They don't leave a detailed account of the crimes they committed, tied up neatly with a bow, and then say, here you go. You don't have to solve the mystery. You won the election. We're going to incriminate ourselves. They don't do that, especially when something happened years and years and years ago, like the JFK assassination, or even like a lot of Epstein's crimes. I never had an expectation that it was going to be that these revelations, JFK or Epstein, was going to be what we hoped that they would be. My expectation, and again, maybe this was an expectation that was misplaced. My expectation is that the Trump administration and the Attorney General and the FBI director and the deputy FBI director would go in and they would begin these investigations all over again from scratch, that they wouldn't rely on what existed within the FBI, that they wouldn't rely on what corrupt deep state officials had collected and put together to produce a narrative that who knows what motivated them to create that narrative. Probably not love of country. That was my expectation. And I know that takes a ton of work. And so I want to talk a little bit about what needs to happen moving forward, because there are some people who are calling for a special counsel to be appointed. Other people, I mentioned it on the show yesterday, actually. I said, yeah, I think we need a special counsel. And some of you said, well, that's not a good idea, because if a special counsel is appointed, then it's basically going to just be memory holing all of the Epstein, anything that does exist inside the government about Epstein. We're not going to get access to that for years because they're not going to be able to talk about it. It's an active investigation. It's going to cost $1 billion, and it's going to be 4 years before we hear anything. And I want to talk about what it would actually look like step by step. And this requires the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch, what it would look like to get some of the answers that we seek about not just Jeffrey Epstein, the creep, but about possible government involvement in either his crimes or the cover up of his crimes. But first, I want to talk to you about a sponsor of today's show, Crowd Health. What if you could get healthcare for under $100? It seems unthinkable, doesn't it, when you think about how much money you pay for insurance every month? Now, you have heard me talk before about Crowd Health, and I want to tell you about something new that they have just introduced. For those of you who are not familiar, Crowd Health is an alternative to health insurance. I quit my health insurance. My husband and I quit. We took our family off health insurance, and we switched to Crowd Health because Crowd Health, they crowdfund when you have a medical event that needs to be paid for. You submit it to the crowd, and we all help pay for each other's medical events. Now, Crowd Health has introduced something new. You can finally rid yourself of the bureaucracy of the healthcare system in order to take agency over your own health. Crowd Health just introduced the Black Swan membership. It's the healthcare alternative for people who want autonomy over their care, their costs, and their lifestyle. They just need a little help with the Black Swan events that, let's face it, do happen in life. For just $95 a month, you get access to a team of health bill negotiators, low-cost prescription and lab testing tools, and a database of low-cost but high-quality doctors vetted by Crowd Health. You stay in control without insurance and their networks dictating your care. And what if something major does happen? Well, you pay the first $15,000, and then the crowd steps in to help fund the rest. It feels like the options that we used to have, the catastrophic options that we used to have before Obamacare, messed everything up. If you use my code Liz, it's only $80 for the first 3 months. Visit joincrowdhealth.com and use promo code Liz. The mandatory disclaimer here is that Crowd Health is not insurance. I personally like to call it assurance. Opt out. Take your power back. This is how we win. Visit joincrowdhealth.com. Use promo code Liz. Okay, so what does the process of accountability actually look like? If we are to seek the answers to the many unknown questions, or the many outstanding questions about Jeffrey Epstein, what does this process look like? Where do you even start? If we look at our government through a lens of reality, meaning we don't expect there to be that whodunit written inside the FBI waiting for us all wrapped neatly in a gift bag, how do we find out this information if it's been hidden or destroyed? And I would like to present to you today some steps that can be taken to start collecting answers to some of these questions. And the first thing is Ghislaine Maxwell, who served as Jeffrey Epstein's madam in his sex trafficking crime syndicate. She was the one who procured underage girls for him. Absolutely disgusting. She's serving in prison for this crime, 20 years, for the sex trafficking of underage girls. She, according to the Daily Mail, is willing to testify in front of Congress. Now, I don't know what that entails. I don't know if she has the client list. I don't know if she has other details that she would be willing and able to not only supply but corroborate about who Epstein was working with. If there were other men who she sex trafficked to, or I don't know what kind of information she has. However, I cannot think of a valid reason why Congress would not take Ghislaine Maxwell up on this offer. I cannot think of a valid reason why not. I don't know if this woman is honest. I mean, I would not trust her. I would not give her the benefit of the doubt because she's in prison for sex trafficking children. That means that you're a bad person who has done evil things. However, what could be the downside of inviting Ghislaine Maxwell to testify in front of Congress? Would this not be a low risk venture in the sense that worst case scenario, she either tells lies or produces nothing. She just wants attention. Best case scenario, she actually gives you leads to answer some of these questions that we don't have answers to. Congress should bring Ghislaine Maxwell in front of the United States Congress. And yes, it should be televised. We should see this interview. Of course, that should happen. The other thing that Congress should do, and like I said, there's actions that need to be taken by the executive branch, by the judicial branch, and by the legislative branch here. The other thing that the legislative branch should do is they should invite for testimony the forensic pathologists, and I'm going to name 3 of them, who have publicly stated that the wounds on Jeffrey Epstein's body following his death are incongruent with the narrative that we were told by the Bureau of Prisons and the medical examiner about the cause of Jeffrey Epstein's death. We were told he committed suicide. We were told it was suicide by hanging. These forensic pathologists, and there is Dr. Michael Bondi, who was hired by Jeffrey Epstein's brother Mark after Jeffrey Epstein's death. Bondi said, no, this doesn't seem like a suicide. When I'm analyzing the marks on his body, it seems like homicide by strangulation. He's one, and he is a very credible forensic pathologist. Then back in 2019, after Jeffrey Epstein's death, I had on my cable news television show at the time, I had a forensic criminologist by the name of Dr. Ron Martinelli. I had him on the show, and he's a specialist. He oftentimes does the autopsies for police-involved shootings. I mean, he is used to victim body analysis, and he also said that that the marks on Epstein's bodies were incongruent with this declaration that it was suicide by hanging. And then about a month and a half ago on the Liz Wheeler show, you can go back and watch this episode. It is, I will warn you, it's a little graphic. It's kind of grisly, but it's also fascinating. Chris Martenson, who is a PhD in pathology and toxicology, analyzed for us on this show. He brought up the pictures of Epstein's body, and he analyzed mark by mark what it means when you look at a body like that, what it would look like if it were suicide by hanging, what it would look like if it's not suicide by hanging, if it's homicide by strangulation. And all 3 of these, and these are just 3, there may even be more. All 3 of these experts contradict the government narrative that we were handed. So Congress should invite them to testify, and they should question them. And then they should subpoena the medical examiner and the Bureau of Prisons, and they should say, okay, your findings have been contested. What do you have to say for yourself? These investigations, these questions can be answered if they're asked to the right people. Congress should also subpoena, or you don't have to subpoena at first. You can invite the person, and if they say no, then you subpoena them. But you can invite Alex Acosta. Alex Acosta is the former U.S. attorney who he presided over the non-prosecution agreement for Jeffrey Epstein, the one that got him, a couple months in that minimum security prison. He was allowed out to work. We don't even know what he did for work. But Alex Acosta was also the one who reportedly said that he was told to stay away from Epstein because Epstein was an intel asset. Well, bring this man in front of Congress. For the love of all that's good, if this man said that, he must have had a basis for why he said that. Please edify us. What is the basis for that comment? After Alex Acosta made that comment, 11 months of his emails just disappeared. his government emails. All the emails that the Department of Justice sent him about Epstein just disappeared. And when obviously they were like, hey, what happened to my emails? The government goes, oh, it's a migration issue. Yeah, we're migrating servers or whatever. What are you talking about? Do you think that we are that naive and that stupid that we would buy that? Here's what needs to happen. President Trump needs to make peace with Elon Musk, because Elon Musk needs to come in with the forensic tools, all of his Doge bros, and they need to do a forensic analysis and find out what actually happened to Alex Acosta's emails, because something tells me that Elon Musk and his Doge bros would be able to find the trail. Because when you delete something, it's not usually actually fully deleted. You can go and hunt it down if you have the technological know-how. And Elon Musk and his Doge bros have that know-how. Let's find out what happened to Alex Acosta's emails, because something tells me it's not a migration issue. It wasn't just, oh, they got dropped on the side of the road as we were moving one email server to another. No, absolutely not. I do not buy that. The other person that Congress should call before them is William Burns. Who is William Burns? William Burns was the Undersecretary of State who, while he was the Undersecretary of State, met with Jeffrey Epstein 3 different times in 3 different locations, and very shortly thereafter became the CIA director. So when you hear reports about, oh, Jeffrey Epstein met with the CIA director, well, technically he met with William Burns before Burns was the CIA director, but it is true that he met with the Undersecretary of State who became the CIA director in the midst of all of these scandals. He should be questioned about Jeffrey Epstein. His official narrative was, oh, he was just consulting with Jeffrey Epstein about, transitioning to the civilian sector. What on earth would Jeffrey Epstein know about that? No, something doesn't ring true there. And if something doesn't ring true, that person who said the thing that doesn't ring true should be hauled in front of Congress and questioned about it. Again, there are many different things that can be done in order to facilitate the process of accountability. It's not just go into the FBI and turn over every banker's box and open every filing cabinet looking for this answer. John Solomon, by the way, reporter John Solomon says there are actually several documents that, of course, don't relate to child sexual abuse material, that, of course, don't relate to underage victims, that Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of the United States, has in her authority, or has the authority to release. This is what he said over the weekend. Take a look at this.
John, I started the podcast earlier today with a phone call from somebody who I think really expressed what a lot of us are feeling about the Pam Bondi debacle here on Epstein. And he said, look, there's nothing more important than crimes against children. And all of our guts are saying there's something really wrong here. And now we're being told to shut up and sit down. And we're being told this without giving us, as he said, help me believe. I want to believe. Help me believe. What is your take on the Epstein thing and why is it just Pam Bondi that has bungled this thing, or what is it?
Listen, the FBI turned over everything it has. There's no doubt about that. I've done reporting on that. Right. I think Pam Bondi simply raised the expectation of this, maybe to have a Fox News moment or just to have one of those sort of excitement moments, and wasn't well prepared, and so overstated what was there, and then they've been rolling backwards ever since. Now, I think there are 2 places that President Trump, Pam Bondi, and the American public could benefit by focusing on. We focused on what the FBI got, but probably the most interesting evidence is still under seal in the grand jury in the Southern District of New York. Every time you see someone talking about this, those documents aren't mentioned. I think that's what people like the lawyers for Epstein were talking about. Alan Dershowitz was talking about this the other day. I think that you look at the grand juries, and there are 2 grand juries. There's one in the state of Florida, and then there's one in Southern District of New York. State of Florida is out of Pam Bondi's control now, though it would have been under control back then. Get that information out. get the information at the Southern District of New York, create a Vaughn index of all the documents, let the people see what's been released, what's not being released, and the reason it isn't being released. You'd have a moment of transparency that would reboot the confidence of the American people to trust going forward. The second place to look is that it is clear that Jeffrey Epstein had some interactions with United States intelligence. I do not believe he was an asset. He wasn't a knock. He wasn't a controlled source for the CIA. But at various times, he would have had interactions with the CIA and the people around the CIA. By Jeffrey Epstein's own admission in an interview he did several years ago before his death, he admitted that he was working with a Saudi Arabian businessman named Khashoggi back in the 1980s when Khashoggi was the main man for the Iran-Contra transactions between the Reagan administration, Iran, and the Contra rebels. It's impossible that Jeffrey Epstein, with that level of relationship, didn't run into the CIA and most likely ran into the CIA, again, a few times. And my sources tell me there's a few other interactions. Let's get that out, too. He's dead. There's no reason to hide this information. So Florida grand jury, Southern District, New York grand jury unsealed, and whatever the CIA has on Epstein, I think that would give a great accountability. It would get Pam Bondi, Donald Trump, and the FBI focused on other bigger things than this. I don't think there's going to be a lot of surprises, but the lack of trust that they've created can be easily fixed with that.
Isn't that interesting? So that was John Solomon from Just the News talking to our very own Glenn Beck. There are documents that can be released. Pam Bondi has the authority as Attorney General to release them. Well, that was the start. Now, the judicial aspect of this that I mentioned, I said that there was things that the executive branch can do. That's the things that Pam Bondi can do, which include releasing these documents and keeping her mouth shut on Fox News. There are things that the legislative branch can do. Congress can exercise their oversight capacity. They can bring before Congress Ghislaine Maxwell and the forensic pathologists and Alex Acosta and William Burns. There is also something that can be done by or with the judicial branch. Alan Dershowitz, who claims he was falsely accused of being associated with Epstein's crimes. He was at one point Epstein's lawyer. He denies any association with Epstein's crimes, and he has vindicated himself with evidence of this claim. He says he has seen the Epstein client list. He knows people that are on the client list, and he says he cannot reveal that publicly because of non-disclosure orders that he's required to follow. He said that there are several judges who have in their power the ability, I believe, to release him from those non-disclosure orders, at which time I assume it seems that Alan Dershowitz would like to reveal that to the public. We've invited Alan Dershowitz to come on the show. We hope he does. We think he has a lot of interesting information and insight on not just his interaction with Epstein, but on this entire process, because he has been an advocate for maximum transparency in this process in order to clear his own name. So he knows where the skeletons lie in our government, in the judicial branch, the legislative branch, the executive branch, both current sitting politicians and also former politicians, people who are no longer in positions of power, but were at the time that that Epstein was committing his crimes. Alan Dershowitz says these judges have the power to allow him to speak. And so the role that we should advocate for, and our voices are, of course, extremely powerful, is that these judges allow Alan Dershowitz to speak the truth. It seems to me to be immoral not to allow a person to reveal information that they know when it impacts our country in as significant of a way as this. So that brings us, of course, to this final thing that needs to happen in the process of accountability. And that final thing is a special prosecutor. And I understand that this is a somewhat fraught topic, even among the right. There are people here today on this live stream who say, yes, the Trump administration should appoint a special prosecutor, get to the bottom of this. And then there are others who want the truth, want transparency, but think a special prosecutor would actually preclude us achieving transparency, because when there's a special prosecutor, it's a process that takes a long time. During this investigation, they can't reveal information that they find drip by drip the way that we want them to. They have to keep it all under wraps until they've come to their conclusion and present that case and their findings to the Attorney General, at which time the Attorney General is supposed to make that public. And maybe that would just bring us back to the same situation where Pam Bondi would be making that decision again. Wouldn't that be a nightmare? Here's the thing though. I do understand the concern about it being 4 years, and I'm not typically a fan of the idea of special prosecutors because I think that's the role of the Department of Justice. However, in this case, I also understand that it's two different missions. One mission being two different missions when it comes to justice. One mission being to hold the deep state accountable for the crimes they have committed against us in the past. And then a totally separate mission to stop criminals and thugs, cartel members, terrorists who are plotting against our homeland. Those are two pretty different things. Those are two very different sets of marching orders. They both matter, and they both matter deeply. One has a more urgent implication on our safety, stopping criminals and thugs and terrorists who are actively plotting to hurt us. And the other, holding the deep state accountable for things they've already done, is important for our rights as free Americans moving forward. However, to split focus, if we're talking about the FBI specifically, to split Kash Patel and Dan Bongino's focus may not be ideal because we want them to spend the full breadth of their time keeping our homeland safe. So what I would do is I would appoint a special investigative team at the Department of Justice. I would appoint a special prosecutor. I would appoint specifically highly skilled forensic tech people. And I'm talking like Elon Musk and his Doge bros, that level. And I would task them, mandate that they go into the FBI and any other agency that we believe is tainted by this, and that they find all the destruction, the evidence of that destruction, all the subversion. If there's hidden documents, find them to produce any documents that they can find or any evidence of destruction or subversion and the names of the people involved in that. Because it's never going to be a situation where we're just like, come on, Kash, come on, Dan, come on, Pam, hand us the goods. The goods don't exist in the way that we have thought about them or that we would like them to exist. It's not like all the dirty evidence is simply behind the locked door. And as soon as we got the key because we won the election, we open the door and we get access to all the dirt. No, that's not how it works. So I would appoint a special investigative team so that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino don't have their focus split. Even so the Attorney General, who I hope does not continue to be Pam Bondi, but even so that an Attorney General can focus on immigration and criminal syndicates and making sure that the rights of the American people are not violated, I would appoint a special task force here. I would appoint an investigative team, a prosecutor, forensic tech people of the highest skill set imaginable to go in there to find the destruction, to identify the subversion, to uncover any hidden documents that they can, produce them, and produce the names of the people involved. That's what I would do. That's what the American people want. The base cares about the Epstein files because it represents justice. And it does represent justice. We care about the Epstein files because we have not been told the truth. There have been lies that have been told to our faces, and we can prove that these lies were told to our faces. And then there's just been a contradicting narrative that we've heard from mostly from Pam Bondi, but from the Trump administration. And there's a way to fix this. There's a way to move forward. It's not just a matter of yesterday I was part of a debate panel on Piers Morgan's show, and his question continued to be, okay, but what do you actually, like, what do you do? What do you do? And that's a good question. It's a good question to ask. So what are we asking for? We're not just asking for Pam Bondi to, like Denise said in the chat, I'm not just asking for Pam Bondi to issue me a personal apology. I don't care about that. I'm asking for justice. So what does that look like moving forward? What does transparency mean? Because we can say these words, give us the files. We want transparency, but what does that concretely mean? And these are the things that I would submit to you, the things we talked about today. These are the things I would submit to you that would be a good start for getting that transparency and what that process of accountability looks like. Now, one thing that I want to show you, one video that I want to show you before we're out of time for today, and this is a follow-up on something I said yesterday. Yesterday's show was titled More Damning Pam Bondi Lies, because Pam Bondi did not just commit a severe lapse of judgment on that day in February in the White House when she gave us those infernal Epstein binders, it wasn't just that she bragged about creating that cover sheet. It wasn't just that she told us the real story was the SDNY subverting the president, hiding truckloads of these documents. It was without verifying. She never even looked at them. I asked her. She said she hadn't seen them. It wasn't just that she went on Fox News and said, the client list is on my desk. I'm going to give it to you any day now. It wasn't just that she then leaked a memo to Axios, of all places, saying, no, the client list doesn't exist and there was no blackmail. He definitively killed himself and you're not getting any more information. It's not only that she did all of this, it's that it's a pattern. It's not an isolated incident. It's not a mistake. It wasn't a lapse of judgment. This is Pam Bondi's character. She continues to propagate lies because she's an attention seeker. She continues to exaggerate and make claims that are hyperbolic and unprovable to us because we don't have access to that information that she has access to. And she gets headlines, and then sometimes she's just caught in the lie, and sometimes she corrects the record, but weeks later, after the original comment that she made has been taken completely out of context, and rightly so. And we talked about that on the show yesterday, but I want to show you the side-by-side that I was talking about. The first video that you're going to see is Pam Bondi telling us that inside the Epstein files, there are thousands of videos of Epstein with little girls. That's what she said standing outside the White House. And then you fast forward a couple weeks, and Pam Bondi says, sitting at that table by President Trump, she was sitting next to Marco Rubio, who was sitting next to President Trump. She says, inside the Epstein files are child pornography. And she clarified that it's not Epstein with the little girls. It's Epstein downloading child pornography off of his computer. Now, my sources had confirmed that to me, that it was never videos of Epstein with little girls. It was always videos that it was a computer screen, Epstein's computer screen, and he's downloading child sexual abuse material. But Pam Bondi deliberately misrepresented what those videos were in order to generate headlines. Watch Pam Bondi lie.
There are tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with children or child porn, and there are hundreds of victims, and no one victim will ever get released. It's just the volume, and that's what they're going through. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein.
So either what she said in the first video was untrue or what she said in the second video was untrue. And my sources tell me that the videos in the Epstein files were always video or computer screen, the computer screen of Jeffrey Epstein downloading child sexual abuse material, which means that Pam Bondi on that media hit deliberately misrepresented what that evidence is to make it more tragic and more salacious and to generate more headlines. And again, the crux of this whole thing is it never had to happen. Pam Bondi created this monster because she was seeking attention, because she's click thirsty. She wants views. She wants to be a Fox News star. And so she lied to you in order to get attention. And that's why I said to President Trump all along, I have nothing personal against Pam Bondi. I don't know her personally. I have met her in a professional capacity, and her professional reputation has become a liability to President Trump. The moment that even someone who's been loyal to President Trump, which Pam Bondi has, at the moment that someone becomes a political liability to you, to the America First agenda that we share with President Trump, the moment that someone becomes a threat to the chances of Republicans' midterm election hopes, then they should not be part of the administration anymore. And that's the case that I made to President Trump. You can like Pam Bondi if you're President Trump. I don't care. You can appreciate the fact that she's been loyal, but she is a liability to your administration. She has lost so much goodwill. She has lost President Trump so much goodwill with his own voters that why would you keep her around? What would be the purpose of that? The people voted for you. We voted for you for justice, and Pam Bondi is actively undermining your base's trust in the question, which is still an outstanding question of whether we are going to see justice from the Trump administration. Okay, guys, make sure you are subscribed, youtube.com/Liz Wheeler, x.com/Liz_Wheeler on Spotify, we have video now. Make sure you're subscribed over there. AJ in the live chat says Pam wants a job at Fox more than Attorney General. Yes, Pam Bondi has done more media appearances than probably, and I actually should do a mathematical calculation of this, but I would suspect that Pam Bondi has done more media appearances in the 5 months that she's been Attorney General than the past 5 Attorney Generals have done in total. You usually don't hear from attorneys general. They are the quiet member of the administration because you don't talk about active investigations. Pam Bondi wants to be a television star. Chris RD44 says any fathers of daughters should be pissed off. Yes, they should. There was a CNN clip. I posted this on my X account. There was a CNN segment last week. They played a clip of our show, and the chyron at the bottom said mega outraged over lack of transparency over Epstein file. And I reposted that. I posted a screenshot of it, and I was like, shouldn't their side be outraged as well? Because the reason that this resonates so deeply with people is not just because it's a deep state, not just because that there's evidence of a deep state cover-up, it's also because of the grisly crime that Epstein committed against children. And it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. Nobody wants that to be acceptable in our country. And if there's evidence that someone committed this crime, which he did, he was in prison. If there's evidence that he committed this crime and then there's some reason that he was held to a different standard of justice and he was let off easy because of his wealth or his connections, maybe his job, I don't know. Was he associated with an intel agency? Did he just have a lot of powerful friends? Was he engaged in blackmailing of politicians? We don't know. But there's evidence that something shady caused justice not to be served in this case. And so it's not just fathers of daughters. It's not just mega world furious after DOJ finds no Epstein client list. Everybody should be outraged. And I think my sources tell me President Trump is beginning to understand exactly what this represents to the base, which means you are doing good work. It means your voice is making a difference. You are speaking out. Because as I've been saying all week, a true friend tells the truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable, even when there's consequences. If you are a true friend of the America First agenda that we share with President Trump, then you want his administration to be as effective as possible, which means that when there are people associated with the administration that become a liability, meaning it makes the administration less effective because they are harming the ability of the administration to execute that agenda, then we help sharpen the effectiveness of the administration by pointing out that liability to the president. And that's all due to you. Credit to you. Keep up the good work. Thank you for watching today. Thank you for listening. We'll be back tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern. We have Mike Benz on the show. He's got a lot to say, and you're going to want to hear it. So make sure you set your alarms probably for 12:55 so that you can be sitting ready for that live stream at 1 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show.